Today on Inquirer, inflation slows down to 8.6% in February. Amid high inflation, government allots 26.6 billion pesos worth of subsidies for the vulnerable sector. 9.3 million families to receive 500 pesos per month for 2 months. Malacanang says PUV operations in Metro Manila normal amid transport strike, but transport groups disagree. And Senate probes Adamson student's death due to hazing.
Nung during po na nagsisisure siya sa baba, nag-request po ako sa kanila na baka pwede dalhin sa ospital.
Maraming ospital sa Parañaque. So, ano sabi nila?
Nagalit po sila sa akin.
Good evening. The Philippine Statistics Authority says inflation in the Philippines slowed down to 8.6% in February 2023. Jean Mangaluz fills us in with the details live. Jean, are we seeing the easing of the inflation rate to continue?
Well, Neil, Finance Secretary Benjamin Jokno said that the inflation rate is projected to go down to 4% by October, and in 2024, it's expected to average at 3.1%. Inflation in the Philippines slowed down after rising for 5 months straight, settling at 8.6% in February 2023 from 8.7% in January, according to the Philippine Statistics Authority. Jokno said that the Philippine economy remains sound despite high inflation. He said that the economy even grew by 7.6% last year. Meanwhile, national statistician Dennis Mapa said that the February slowdown was attributed mainly to slower price increases in the transport commodity group, recording a 9% inflation rate, which was down from 11.1% in January. Among the 12 other commodity groups monitored for Consumer Price Index, 9 reflected faster price increases in February compared to their levels in the previous month. The biggest contributor to rising prices in February were food items, particularly vegetables, fish, and meat. Other major contributors were housing and utilities, particularly electricity, rentals, and cooking gas or LPG, as well as transport, particularly fares on public road vehicles and diesel. According to the PSA, core inflation, excluding selected food and energy items in the headline inflation, rose to 7.8% in February from 7.4% in the previous month. That's it from me, Neil. Back to you.
That's Jean Mangaluz reporting live. Amid high inflation, Finance Secretary Benjamin Jokno says subsidies worth 26.6 billion pesos have been allotted for the vulnerable sector, including a cash assistance totaling 1,000 pesos per household. The Department of Finance chief says under the cash transfer program, a cash assistance of 500 pesos a month for 2 months will be given to 9.3 million families. According to Jokno, subsidies would also be in the form of fertilizer and fuel discounts for farmers and fisherfolk and fuel aid for the transport sector. Jokno says they have already identified the funding source and the subsidies would be distributed in a few days or weeks.
Tutuloy natin yung Kadiwa. In fact, we will expand the Kadiwa program. We will continue the provision of fuel discounts, yung programa for the farmers and the fisher folks. And then we will extend the targeted cash transfer program for 2023.
The Senate begins its probe into the death by fraternity-related hazing of Adamson University student John Matthew Salilig. To tell us more, here's Beatriz Pinlac reporting live. Bay, what are the latest developments from the hearing?
Neil, senators are seeking stiffer penalties for schools following the death by fraternity-related hazing of Adamson University student John Matthew Salilig. This was discussed when the Senate Committees on Justice and Human Rights and Public Order and Dangerous Drugs began its probe on Salilig's death. Adamson's Office for Student Affairs Director, John Navalasca, pointed out that Salilig's fraternity, Tau Gamma Phi, was not a recognized organization of the school, and therefore its activities. Senator Bato de la Rosa, however, slammed the policy of not recognizing other fraternities in their campus, saying this is tantamount to saying they don't care about these fraternities. If they knew other fraternities existed, De La Rosa asked why they were not regulated. He then said the university is seemingly washing their hands on this brutal incident. Senator Raffy Tulfo further grilled the school, calling them useless for not identifying and summoning fraternity leaders and members to discuss with them outlawed activities like hazing and harassment, among others. But Philippine Association of Colleges and Universities Legal Counsel Ana Maria Abad argued that they were acting on such issues by conducting orientations about school policies and regulations every semester. Senator Francis Tolentino, however, pointed out that while the new semester started months ago, its in-person seminar on the Anti-Hazing Act, anti-bullying and drugs addiction and resistance education was only scheduled on Saturday, March 18, a month after Salilig died. Velasquez said the school recognizes the shortcoming in scheduling the orientation, but he argued that they were taking into consideration a lot of other factors. Tolentino then thought aloud. If the orientation was only scheduled earlier, could it have prevented the hazing death? Meanwhile, Roy de la Cruz, a neophyte who underwent hazing with Salilig, recalled earlier in the hearing that he had asked the fraternity members to bring Salilig to the hospital after seeing that the latter was having a seizure. But according to him, they declined the request and even got mad at him for raising a suggestion that was not allowed given the situation. Back to you, Neil.
Bay, are senators open to possibly amending the anti-hazing law? And do they see any flaws in the law, maybe in the law itself or maybe the implementation of the law that allowed this unfortunate death to happen?
Yes, Neil, Senator Raffy Tulfo actually said he would be filing a proposed amendment to the anti-hazing law, which would add teeth to the legislation and hold liable school administrators, fraternity members and officials, and even owners of venues where hazing and welcoming rites are conducted. Senators Bato, De La Rosa, and Robin Padilla have expressed support for Tulfo and this bid to amend the law. And Senator Francis Tolentino also said that the upper chamber aims to fine-tune the law based on the Senate hearings on Salilig's death.
Bay, I'm also curious about their stand on reviving the mandatory ROTC because, as you know, in 2002, military training was made optional, fueled by the killing of UST sophomore cadet Mark Wilson Chua. So, what's the stand now of the senators regarding this issue?
Actually, Neil, senators have aired opposing views on the calls to scrap the bill, the mandatory ROTC bill, following the death of Salilig. Among those who called to scrap the mandatory ROTC plan in view of the hazing death are Senators Coco Pimentel and Senator Risa Hontiveros, among others. Now, Senator Joel Villanueva, also a member of the Tau Gamma Phi fraternity, aired reservations about the bid to reinstitute the mandatory ROTC. He and Hontiveros were actually the ones to point out the case of Chua, where they noted that full justice has yet to be achieved. But Neil, to note, senators backing the revival of mandatory ROTC like Senator Bato de la Rosa, Sherwin Gatchalian, and Jungo Estrada stood their ground as they argued that hazing deaths is an issue separate from the mandatory ROTC.
Thanks, Bay. That's Beatrice Pinlac reporting live. Malacanang says the operation of public utility vehicles in Metro Manila has normalized despite the presence of protesters in parts of the metropolis. For the details, Zacarian Sarao is reporting live. Zach.
Yes, Neil, the palace earlier claimed the operation of public utility vehicles, or PUVs, in Metro Manila has already normalized despite the presence of protesters in parts of the metropolis amid a week-long transport strike. To recall, transport groups staged a week-long strike beginning Monday, March 6 in Metro Manila to protest the jeepney phase-out in the government's PUV modernization program. Citing the Interagency Task Force on Tigil Pasada, the Presidential Communications Office, or PCO, said that the routes where free rides were made available on Monday are now under normal operation with no reports of stranded passengers. There were also no reported incidents requiring emergency preparedness and asset deployment. According to PCO, even before the day of the transport strike itself, the government has already crafted contingencies to, quote-unquote, minimize the impact of disturbance to the commuting public. To recall, the Metropolitan Manila Development Authority, or the MMDA, also made a similar announcement on Monday, claiming that the strike had quote-unquote minimal effect on the public transportation. However, Transport Group Manila denounced this, claiming that during the strike, the roads of Metro Manila was akin to the traffic situation during major holidays or when boxer Manny Pacquiao has a fight. Manibela also reiterated that the transport groups remain committed to completing the week-long transport strike. Meanwhile, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. earlier said that the government's modernization program is necessary, but its implementation needs more discussions among its stakeholders, particularly jeepney drivers groups. Back to you, Neil.
That's Zakarian Sarao reporting live. Next on Inquirer Today. Complaint filed against Negros Oriental Representative Arnulfo Teves Jr. and 5 others over 2019 killings. Philippine Coast Guard warnings get no response from Chinese vessels near Pag-asa Island. And series of earthquakes rock Davao de Oro. This Inquirer Today will be back shortly.
Si Tekla Tamoria from Pasig City. Graduate ako ng 2010 sa UP Diliman College of Fine Arts. Tapos nung 2014, nag-aral ako ng TESDA Garments. Doon ako natuto paano magtahi. From there, mula sa Fine Arts to pagtatahi, doon ko nag-start gumawa ng wearable art na mula sa mga retaso. In 2019, naisip ko, sige, parang gamit ako ng used clothes, t-shirt, cotton t-shirt, mangolekta ako sa mga kaibigan ko. Tapos yung binigay sa akin ng mga kaibigan ko, yun yung gagamitin ko medium to create another clothes. So, pinag-aralan ko yung paano maghabe, yung sa basahan, bakit pumutok sa mga Pilipino is yung familiarity ng basahan na ginagamit natin araw-araw. Matapos nun, pag nalaman pa nila na gawa to sa used t-shirt, which is isa sa pinaka-common na damit natin, di ba? To the point na dinidisregard natin at ginagamit nating basahan. Lahat ng mga nabibili natin, kunyari sa fast fashion, lahat ng mga yun, galing yun sa mga sweatshops, galing yun sa mga mananahe, yung mga binibili natin sa Tiangge, mga kaya nasa mall na, ano yan yung mga tao dyan, magtatahi yan, 5 piso, isa, or minimum wage with no benefits. Tapos hindi mo na rin maiisip na nakakatulong ka pala sa bad system ng fashion industry. Sustainability ng fashion sa akin, nag-start siya, I think, more than 10 years ago. Nung naging aware ako sa apekto ng fast fashion sa mundo, yung pollution na nagagawa ng fabric waste. After nun, nung natuto ako nun, tapos nagtatahi rin ako, parang naging penitensya ko sa sarili ko na hindi ako bumili ng mga damit. So hanggang ngayon, mga hand-me-downs lang yung sinusuot ko. I think future is sustainable fashion. Hindi naman sa sinasabi ko na huwag kang pumorma kasi fulfilling din na ayusan ng sarili. Mas maging aware lang tayo na merong mga pamamaraan at mas maganda kapag hinahaluan mo ng sarili mong creativity. Kasi lahat naman tayo may clothes. Hindi naman ibig sabihin na parang nasuot mo na or parang hindi na siya uso. Parang tapos na yung story nun. Parang pwede mo siyang i-upcycle. Pwede mo siyang ipamigay.
A complaint was filed against Negros Oriental Representative Arnolfo Teves Jr. and 5 others for killings that were perpetrated way back in 2019. For the details on this story, our justice reporter Teves Jr. joins us live. Tech?
Neil, the Philippine National Police Criminal Investigation and Detection Group on Tuesday filed before the Department of Justice criminal complaint against Negros Oriental Representative Arnolfo Teves Jr. and 5 others for 2019 killings. Aside from Teves, facing complaints for multiple murder is a certain Richard Cuadra, Jasper Tanasan, Alex Mayagma, Rolando Pinili, and a certain Hannah May. The complaint was for the killings committed against a certain Lopez Dungog on March 25, 2019, near Siliman Medical Center in Dumaguete City, and for the deaths of Lester Pialgao and Pasito Retes Libron, also committed in 2019 in Negros Oriental. The police Teves has yet to issue a statement on the matter as he is currently undergoing treatment abroad. Neil?
Tech, let's call spade a spade. So as you know, Congressman Teves made a comment recently regarding this. So ito bang complaint filed against him? Is this related to the investigation on the death of Governor Degamo?
According to Attorney Levi Baligod, a lawyer of the victims, the complaint filed today is not related to the Degamo case. This is entirely a different matter.
Okay, Tech, thank you. That's Tech Torres Tupas reporting live. The Philippine Coast Guard says the Chinese militia vessels spotted near Pag-asa Island are not responding to challenges issued by the Philippines. In a public briefing, Philippine Coast Guard spokesperson for the West Philippine Sea, Commodore J. Tariela, says a personnel stationed in Pag-asa Island continue to challenge the intrusion of over 40 Chinese vessels within the vicinity of Pag-asa Island. However, Tariela says the Chinese vessels are not responding to the radio challenges. The Philippine Coast Guard on March 4 recorded the presence of a People's Liberation Army Navy vessel, a China Coast Guard vessel, and 42 suspected Chinese maritime militia vessels near Pag-asa Island. Pag-asa is the second largest naturally occurring feature in Spratlys and the only one with civilian inhabitants. It has been occupied by the Philippines since 1971.
I think they get used to that kind of feeling, no, na merong Chinese maritime militia vessels na umiikot sa isla ng Pag-asa. This is not something new. Sa mga nakaraang panahon, alam na natin na ilang beses na rin itong iniikutan ng mga Chinese vessels, whether China Coast Guard or Chinese maritime militia, sir.
Several earthquakes rocked Davao de Oro and nearby areas on Tuesday afternoon. The Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, or PHIVOLCS, reports that a tectonic earthquake of 5.9 magnitude struck Davao de Oro at 2:02 p.m. The epicenter was located 8 kilometers southeast of New Bataan in Davao de Oro with a depth of 10 kilometers. Intensity 5 was recorded in Maco, Maragusan, Nabunturan, New Bataan, and Pantukan towns in Davao de Oro, while Intensity 4 was felt in Moncayo in Davao de Oro, City of Tagum in Davao del Norte, and City of Bislig in Surigao del Sur. Intensity 3 was recorded in Santa Cruz in Davao del Sur, City of Davao, and City of Mati in Davao Oriental. Merely 2 hours later, a magnitude 5.6 quake was also recorded in Davao de Oro at 4:47 p.m. The epicenter of the magnitude 5.6 quake was located 11 kilometers southeast of a New Bataan town in Davao de Oro. It had a depth of 11 kilometers. All throughout the day, several weaker earthquakes were also recorded in Davao de Oro and the nearby areas. Alamin naman natin ang mainit na balita sa mundo ng showbiz kasama sa Irvin Santiago ng Bandera. Irvin?
Hi Neil at sa lahat ng mga kabandera natin all over the universe. Ito na nga ang latest Bandera Chika. Gustong-gusto ng magkaapo ng award-winning actress na si Sylvia Sanchez, kaya naman looking forward na siya sa pagpapakasal ng anak na si Congressman Arjo Atayde at ng TV host actress na si Maine Mendoza. Ayon kay Sylvia, handang-handa na siyang maging lola anytime at sa katunayan ay may mga nabili na siyang mga gamit para sa mga apo. Pero ipinagdiinan ng veteran kapamilya actress, hindi naman daw niya pine-pressure ang kanyang mga anak sa usapin ng pagbuo ng sarili nilang pamilya. Dahil say ni Ibiang, at the end of the day ay desisyon pa rin ng mga ito kung kailan nila nais magka-baby. Super iwas naman ang aktres nang matanong kung kailan at saan magaganap ang kasal ni na Congressman Arjo at Maine.
Sa future ba, excited ka nang maging lola?
Ay, gusto ko nang magkapo. Gusto ko nang magkapo, 50 na ako eh. Kasi may usapan kami noon ng mga anak ko. Huwag niyo akong bigyan ng apo. Pag hindi pa ako 50, gusto ko 50 years old. Bigyan niyo na ako ng apo. Hindi ko sila minamadali. Pero, kasi buhay nila yan. Gusto ko rin i-enjoy sila, di ba? Enjoy nila yung buhay nila together. Pero, ang akin is, maghihintay ako. Basta ready na ako. When in fact, meron na nga ako mga nabili.
Ay, ayan Good!
At yan ang Bandera Chika natin today. Thanks, Neil.
Maraming salamat, Irvin, and these are the stories you need to know today. I'm Neil Mercado. Catch Inquirer Today live weekdays at 6 p.m. Follow INQUIRER.net on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Reddit. For more stories, visit INQUIRER.net. Good evening.